just want to say thank you to Lydia for setting this up. I was so excited when she first let me know that she was, and interestingly, it was in the same week that I decided I was going to start telling people a lot about my experiences and becoming a little bit more public. And then Lydia contacted me and saying, I'm going to do this event. And I thought, ooh, shall I? There was this real trepidation, but I knew I wanted to do it, I had to do it. So thank you. And thank you for being here, because obviously there's no point in internet. And just this opportunity to be able to share my journey and share my story. And as I said, I've done public speaking before, but it's generally been about the type of things that I've done in the past, which were reflexology and Reiki and stuff like that. And that has been where I've kind of spoken publicly. But this is my first time speaking publicly about things like aliens, UFOs and Sasquatch, which are a little bit kind of less mainstream than probably a lot of things that people, even in the spiritual world, tend to talk about. For many years, I'll tell you my whole kind of story, my background in a moment, but kind of even in sort of what we would call spiritual worlds, and I have to, I hate the word spiritual, but I can't find another word for it, so I do that a lot, because I don't like it. But you know what I mean. So in the kind of spiritual world, even there, it's okay to kind of talk about, your old Aunt Beryl comes through and talks to you, and, you kind of try all these different things. But when you start talking about aliens and UFOs, and that you had a little ride in a UFO and things like that, people do kind of go, okie dokie, and then you realise, like, do I carry on talking, or do I just kind of, let's talk about the weather for a moment, And so I've become quite cautious over the years, about who I tell what to. So this is quite new to kind of, I have no idea what you guys are going to think about what I say. But I've got to the point, I think, in my life where I feel it doesn't matter. And a lot of what, other people have spoken about today is that we're all on our own journey. We're all travelling through our own experiences, and somebody else's experience may not be your experience. But it's just kind of honouring that and kind of accepting that everybody is on their own path, everybody is journeying in the way that they need to go through. And so I feel kind of like perhaps now the point I'm at in my life is that there's less judgment maybe around people being able to accept what I'm going to say. So my background is, so I'm 54 years old now. But from a very young age, I had psychic abilities, what people would call psychic abilities. It wasn't accepted in my family. In fact, in part of my family, it was very kind of shut down. It was seen as being, not exactly witchcraft, but, you just don't talk about that sort of stuff, and, don't be so sick. So, from a very young age, even though I was knowing things that were kind of, I knew they were going to happen before they happened in our reality, I learned to not say anything. I learned to shut that down from a very early age. And seeing things, hearing things. Again, I learned to not really mention that. And perhaps as a young child, maybe I don't remember properly, but perhaps as a very young child, maybe I did mention it, but because I got shut down, I made the decision quite early to not discuss it. So I was kind of in a bit of a lonely world. I did share some things with my sister, who also has had experiences through her life as well. So I had a little bit of kind of comradeship at home in terms of being able to share some things. From a young age, what I used to do at night, just for a bit of fun, was I used to lie in my bed on my tummy, and I used to have the headboard. And I can see it now, this kind of pinky kind of coloured headboard. And I used to pretend to turn a TV on. And I used to do this before the time of remote controls. Turn the TV on, and I would see visions. Now these visions were not on the actual headboard. A lot of them were in my mind, but it was like they were kind of almost in my mind, but also I could see them in front of me at the same time. And I began to just enjoy playing. It was a game, it was light, it wasn't anything too heavy, I just enjoyed doing that in the evening. And what I started realising that I could do was I could predict what was going to be on the front of the newspapers. My mum and dad, this would have been back in the kind of late 70s, 80s, would always get the Daily Mirror and the Sun. I don't know why I used to get two papers, but they used to get two papers. And I would be able to predict what was going to be on the papers, what the headlines were. Now I was quite young, so I wasn't exactly watching the news, current affairs had no interest for me. And a lot of the things that I was able to predict were things like, you know, a celebrity had died, someone had got divorced, you know, the things that I wouldn't have known beforehand. But I didn't say anything, I didn't share it, I just enjoyed playing this game. As time went on, I began to not need the headboard anymore, and I would just have these flashes of visions. So I could literally just be doing anything, going about playing with my friends, just kind of, I used to do a lot of drawing, colouring as a young child, and then suddenly I would get a flash of something that was going to happen. Often to do with family or friends. And also very, very strong sense of intuition. And I think, we'll come back to this in a moment, but intuition is something that I'm sure every single person here has experienced and is aware of. And I think in our society at the moment, we don't honour that level of intuition that we all have enough. And I think it's something that if you choose to, developing that intuition in yourself can be the most powerful thing that you can ever do in your life, is to actually really, really developing that part of yourself. And very similar to, again, to sort of the other talks that happened today so far, is that everything comes from here, everything comes from you, everything comes from who you are. Yes, throughout my life, I've done lots of courses, I've worked with different people, I have channeled various different energies or entities, but at the end of the day, this is what's the most important thing. And it's not ever giving that power away, as I think Dave and Claire said so well, was not giving that power away to anything else. And if you do offer your power to someone else, in that you're wanting to get some more information, you're wanting advice, just being as discerning as possible about that, and making sure that you're making your judgments by going back into your own level of trust. And that goes with what I'm going to say today. So, you know, you may not resonate with anything I say, you may resonate with some of it, you may think, yeah, okay, not sure about that, that doesn't really kind of gel with me. It's important that you focus on the things that do resonate with you. And for me, that's been the most important part of my path. Certainly listen to today's talk about Reiki. I did Reiki up to the Reiki master level back in 2000, I think I started that. And I was a bit of an annoying Reiki student, because I kept saying, you know, they'd say put your hands like this, and I'd say, well, it feels better for me to put my hands like that, and I feel like I need to put my hands here. And they were like, well, no, in the manuals it says to put your hand there. And so yeah, I was probably quite annoying with the teachers because I wanted to go with what was my intuition, and that has partly been my journey, is to really, really focus on my intuition, what feels right for me, my gut feelings. So yeah, so I travelled this journey through my childhood. There were certain things that happened, you know. One story that comes up for me was when I'd come back in from school. I think I was about 14 years old, and I was just about to get out of my school uniform and change, and just this really strong voice. And again, I'll talk more about the voices later. Some voices sound like other people's voices that come to me, but a lot of the time I've realised it's actually my voice. It's my voice that is coming to me and telling me that something is about to happen. So I'd arrived home, just about to get changed, and this voice, this really strong voice in me, just said, "No, you're going to go out in a couple of minutes. Stay. You know, you need to be ready to go." No sooner had that happened that the phone rang. and that my mum had been involved in a mugging, sadly. She was fine, but she was in hospital, and that I needed to go and see her. And quickly sort of pop out and get on a bus to go and see her. And so those kind of things I know happen to a lot of people. You know, you get a feeling, you think about somebody, and then the phone rings, or you think about someone, and then you bump into them, you haven't seen them for a long time. Those are the kind of things that happen to everybody all the time. I don't think there's many people that could turn around and say that's never happened to them in their lives. I chose to develop those intuitions, and also that level of kind of what people would call being psychic. So, for instance, in that story with my mum, that situation had already happened with my mum. She had already been mugged. Someone was just about to make the phone call, so it had already happened. So was I tuning in? And these are questions I ask myself. I don't know all the answers. You know, there's still things I'm kind of trying to think, well, why? How did that happen? Was I just tuning in because I was close to my mum? And when you have any close relationships, we can have those relationships whether we are in the same physical space or not. And telepathy is something that I'm really passionate about. And you know, I think it's something that everybody has. I think every single person has the ability to have a telepathic relationship if they choose to have that. There have been a lot of other incidences in my life where I haven't known, or the incident hasn't already happened. So sometimes it's that things are going to happen in what we would call the future. The whole thing about, again, I think Dave and Claire kind of touched on it briefly, to do with what we call past, present, and future. They are all, again, they're concepts. And that idea that those things don't actually have to exist in that order came to me. I was travelling in India when I was about 26 years old, and I was reading loads of books, and one of the books, which is called The Mind of God, and it isn't about God in the religious sense, but it's about taking apart, there's a lot of physics in it, and it's about taking apart concepts of past, present, and future. And so, in terms of people saying, you know, we can time travel, I believe we can time travel because actually there is no travelling to happen. Those things, those past, present, and future, potentially are happening as we speak. They are all happening. And so that's why people like myself can have these flashes, these images of things that haven't already happened. We haven't already allowed them to come into our consciousness, into our energy field. And so it also works the other way with being able to manifest. So we manifest and we can attract in what we choose to have in our lives. So through my life, so I started as a teenager, different people would come through to me. So I remember one time I suddenly was lying in bed and my leg started really hurting. My right leg was really painful, and I suddenly had this flash of this woman, and she said, Harriet. I had no idea who she was, but I had a sense that she was family. I spoke to my dad and I said, was there anyone called Harriet in our family? And he said, yes, that was your nan's sister. And I said, all right. And he said, yeah, she always walked with a stick. She had a bad leg. I was like, which leg? It was her right leg. Yeah, she was always in a lot of pain. So I began a kind of relationship with Harriet and began chatting to her, and kind of, it was really, there was nothing profound that came through. It was very much kind of just, hello, I'm part of your family, and those kind of things. But again, it kind of opened up a bit of a world for me. I didn't say too much to my family, I just kept it to myself. But more and more family members that have passed away began to come through. And I began with my friends to work on this book. I inherited this book from my grandma. It's called Fortune Telling for Fun and Popularity. And this was given to her in 1953. Now my nan, this is my maternal nan, she was not into psychic stuff at all. In fact, she was quite religious. Although I think she was probably more religious in the terms of going to church was, you know, what you did back then. You could dress up and kind of, you know, have a Sunday sermon. But this book, somehow she received it, and then I received it. And so as a teenager, this book became like a little Bible for me. And it has loads and loads of little kind of exercises to do in it. And they're to do with, you know, predicting the future and telepathy and palmistry and all this kind of stuff. And I just loved it. And me and my friends used to just kind of, you know, usually about which boy I fancied or that kind of thing, you know. And it was kind of like asking all these questions. And it was fun. It was fun. We kind of did, you know, we did kind of hook into the answers and kind of hand over our power in some ways to this book. But as young people, we kept it fun. We kept it light. And I think for me that has been, again, a massive lesson and something that when I'm supporting people on their spiritual journey is to keep it light. If you start kind of like getting too heavy about your development, you block your own energy. Because when we're light, our energy is light, our energy is kind of flowing, and we can receive and we can understand and we can kind of move forward on our own paths. As soon as we start getting too kind of serious about it, we do block our own energy. And that's why children are great. Even things, you know, like, let's say, crystals, things like that, working with those, you know, a child will pick up a crystal and just have fun with it. A child will just have fun with knowing that they can guess certain things. There's not a general heaviness about it. And so for me, on my journey, that's been really important, is to keep it as light as possible. And just kind of have fun with your journey. It doesn't have to be this massive, heavy, you know, trolling through lots of, you know, serious books and heaviness. It doesn't have to be that. One thing I started doing, again, as a kind of teenager, probably late teens, was I used to try and guess what someone was going to wear before I met them. So if I was meeting a friend, I'd be like, right, I'm going to guess. Now, okay, part of me was obviously guessing within what I knew about that person, but I would try and guess, like, what's going to be the colour they're going to wear. So, you know, I'd be meeting a friend, I'd be thinking like that, and I'd suddenly get a flash of red, and I think, well, she's going to be wearing red. Okay, so that's what she's going to be wearing. I'd turn up, she's wearing red trousers. And this was something, again, it was just playful, it was just supporting me to develop, without almost even knowing, I was just having fun, developing my natural abilities, which we all have. My dad is a little bit more open to this kind of stuff, and so we began to do some practicing of telepathy. We used to sit together, and one of us used to draw a picture on a piece of paper, and then the other one would have to, you know, or you'd think of something, and the other one would have to draw it. And every time, it was almost like, you know, out of, say, let's five attempts, 4 would always be right. So, and actually telepathy is something that has been studied a lot. If in the whole kind of spiritual world, looking at things in a scientific way, telepathy is one of the areas that's been looked at the most. Possibly because it's easier to study. It's you know, you can do practical exercises like that. So it's not about how someone feels, it's about a very practical thing. I'm thinking this, you're going to receive that message. And so there is a lot, you know, again, you can look online, you just type in telepathy studies, and there are different universities that are continually doing studies on the power of telepathy. And they all come out that it's true, that we do have the power of telepathy. And these are scientific studies that have, you know, they've gone through the whole rigmarole of making very controlled experiments with people. And they found that it does happen. It does happen. People do have telepathic experiences. And I know I have that with my children, which sometimes can be a bit annoying because you're trying to think of something that you don't want them to know, and then they go and clock it. But you know, we all have that, and we have that with our loved ones. We have that with our friends and families. And again, it's, do you want to develop that? You know, again, talking earlier about this responsibility, this self-responsibility. If we could all hear what each other was saying, what would be different? How would that affect us? Would that be good, or would that be quite tricky? You know, do we want our minds to be fully open to other people? Do we want to, or are we? Is it actually better that some of our thoughts are kept in our own minds? But you can choose. You know, again, you can choose to develop those things with a friend, with somebody that you trust. You know, doing very simple exercises. Just as I say, just thinking of something, and the other person has to, you know, think of it or draw it. There are also ESP cards, cards that kind of, so someone will pick one of the cards and the other person has to try and guess what they've got. So these were all exercises that I just began doing myself. I began working with pendulums. When I first began working with pendulums was, again, probably late teens. I thought the pendulum had the answer, you know, which is what a lot of people think. I was like, yes, this is the answer. Should I do this? Should I go there? What job shall I take? Which, you know, what shall I have for breakfast? And it literally was me handing over what I was feeling like this pendulum is going to be, you know, giving the answers to everything. I never have to ever think anything again and make any decisions again. Obviously, what I've learned over time, and what's really important, is that it's me that is supporting that pendulum to move in a different direction. And I don't mean that I'm deliberately making it move, yes, that way or no, that way. But that there is a conscious connection between me and that pendulum. And so pendulums are great to use, again, for development, for psychic development. They are also good for supporting you to find out what you really want. Because if you get a yes when you actually wanted a no, or vice versa, that tells you something. That tells you something. Well, actually, no, I didn't want that. I wanted this. So I often say to people, you know, it's more about what was your first feeling when that pendulum went in one direction or the other. Or I will ask someone if they're trying to make a decision to put various choices down, turn them over, mix them up, and then you pick one at random. What's your gut feeling? Because your gut feeling is really important. It's not, right, I'm going to pick that one, that's the one I'm going to have to do. It's what is your gut feeling when you pick that at random. And this is the same as well when someone is channeling. You know, someone could come through and offer you advice. If that doesn't feel right to you, don't take it. No, if you wouldn't take advice from everybody, if you ask a particular question to anybody, whether it's in your family or friends, you might respect those people, but you don't necessarily have to do what they tell you to do. And it's really important to know that you have that choice. And so I think having choice and knowing that you have that responsibility of your own choice is really important in any developmental path. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, so I'm going to make sure. Okay, right, my visions. So I've had a lot of visions over many, many years of things that seem as though they're in the future. One of the most profound ones, but probably because of who she was, that really sticks in my mind and in my heart, was of Princess Diana. And at the time I was living in a little bedsit in London, didn't have a TV, I had a radio, and I used to go for evening walks. I was not far from Hampstead Heath, I used to go for evening walks. Came home, lay on the bed, and just immediately, and this was something I was fairly used to by then, I was in my late 20s, something at that point, all of a sudden, again, it was my voice, but I didn't necessarily recognise it as my voice at the time, but just when someone incredibly famous is going to die and you'll hear about it tomorrow. And it was like, you know, so famous. And I sort of lay there and I thought, well, who is this person going to be? And I was trying to ask questions. The only other information that I could get was this person was in their 30s, but they were world famous. It was going to bring, and it was the feeling that I got, was that this was going to bring universal grief. This was going to bring, you know, a state of mourning to everybody. And I just lied there and I was thinking, well, who on earth is this going to be? You know, someone that's world famous, they're in their 30s, didn't know if it was male or female. And the only person I could think of at that time was thinking, is it Michael Jackson? He's in his 30s, he's very famous. Eventually I just went to bed, went to sleep, thought, okay, forget about it, I'm not getting any more information. Woke up in the morning and turned my radio on, and they were talking about the death of Diana. Didn't click with me straight away. Initially I just thought, oh, it's about a play, is it a play that's going to be on or something, or show or something? And then of course they started talking more, and as I began to kind of wake up properly, I realised this is it. And then they started talking about this state of mourning, you know, that there was this kind of mass grief happening. And I remember just sitting there, and then I just burst into tears. And obviously there was this mass mourning. So again, that made me sort of question, well, how did I know? She wasn't dead at that point when I got the information. This was what we call future. But somehow this thing we call future had seeped into now, and I was able to know that this was going to happen. And this happens all the time to me. And I think part of it is because I have chosen to develop it. For a lot of people that would be maybe something they don't want to develop. Again, you can make a choice. Maybe you don't want to know what's going to happen. Maybe there are multiple futures, but maybe sometimes we can pull in one. There's many different, obviously, theories as to how that can happen. One kind of a bit more light-hearted one that happened recently was we'd stopped doing at home. I'd stopped doing online shopping for a while, and then I suddenly said, oh, I think I'll get an Ocado shop. I think you know, I need a lot of stuff. Let's get an Ocado shop. And my kids sort of remembered how when we used to get Ocado shops a few years ago, we'd always try and guess what, because they always text you and tell you, you know, it's going to be a certain person, they'll give you the name, and they'll tell you what van it's in, and the van usually has fruit or veg on it. So, you know, you could have, you know, Lee and the onion van or something like that. And so we were like, yeah, okay, let's have a guess. So one of my sons, both of my sons are very quite psychic, but one of them particularly, and he kind of looked at me and he said, Mummy, what do you think? What do you think it should be? And I immediately just saw the name Harry. And I often get my visions, say I'm auditory, so I hear visions, but I also see, and I see names a lot of the time. So the name Harry just flashed in front of me. So I was just like, it's going to be Harry. And he went, okay, Mummy, and what van? And immediately I saw red fruit. Couldn't work out what it was, but it was red, and I heard the words red fruit. So I said, well, it's going to be Harry and it's a red fruit van. And so my son said, well, raspberries. So he said, okay, it's going to be Harry in the raspberry van. An hour later, I get a text through, your delivery today will be by Harry in the raspberry van. So this young guy turns up, and I'm like, we knew it was going to be you. I just thought I was just going to say it. We knew it was going to be you, Harry in the raspberry van. And he was like, how did you know that? And I said, well, I'm kind of psychic, so, you know, we sort of play this game, and, you know, we knew it was you. Out of all the names that we could have picked in the world and all the different bands we could have picked, you know, we've got it. And he said, wow, he said, I'm really interested in the whole psychic thing. He said, I'm thinking of training to do Reiki. And he was only a young guy, probably 22, something like that. And he was like, but I'm feeling like, you know, none of my friends are into it, and I don't know, you know, I feel alienated from my friends. And we ended up standing on, bless it, we were probably late for all these other deliveries, but we ended up standing on the doorstep and chatting for about 20 minutes about his spiritual path and you know, Reiki or whatever, you know, other kind of avenues that he could take. And so it felt really important that I knew that it was Harry in the raspberry bands. It wasn't just like, okay, we've guessed it, the end. It actually felt like I needed to tell him, and I needed to tell him for a reason, because this guy was on the cusp of not knowing whether he should go down a particular path or not. Never seen him again. So I'm hoping that he followed the path he chose. And so those are things that happen to me all the time. And as I say, I do believe that this is something that can happen to everybody. I don't think I'm special in any shape or form. I think this is something that everyone can be open to if you choose. It's not always an easy path, and I will say that. Sometimes it's a hard path, and sometimes you feel very separate to this physical reality that we're in. And sometimes you do know things that are going to happen that you don't want to happen, and you think, I don't want that to happen. I don't want that particular thing. Obviously, usually someone dying or someone becoming ill. And you feel like, I don't want that to happen. But if that doesn't leave my mind, then I know. It's like I try really hard to kind of go, well, I'm going to change that. And sometimes I have been able to, or we have been able to, because obviously it's not just me doing it. So my visions are continual, they just happen all the time, travelling in and out of past, present and future. And my psychic abilities have just grown over the years, just grown and grown, and I now am able to very much tap into people's ancestors. So not just, people that have passed away that they might have known, or that, were kind of like not too many generations back, but something that I'm really, really passionate about is our ancestral stories that have come through, and each of us have ancestors, and we're all connected. There's not that many ancestors that separate us from each other. So no matter where we're from in the world, we're connected. We are connected. And so I will often get people's ancestors coming through, and as I'm talking about this, of course, immediately I am, and I do this with her. I meant to say at the beginning, if I suddenly go a bit, like, look a bit phased out, it's because I'm actually hearing things coming through. So the ancestors, and I felt this actually while I was sitting there, and it was during the demonstration of hypnotherapy, because I was getting a bit kind of going down into my own kind of meditative state. I started thinking, ooh, yeah, I'm not alone. This is quite packed, actually, and there's lots of people here. And I partly see them, and I sometimes see them as in what feels like with my eyes. I sometimes see them in my mind, and I sometimes just know. When you walk into a room and you just think, there's someone here. I know there's someone here. It's just a feeling. Scientific experiments can't judge that feeling. That's why I think things like telepathy have been studied a lot, but not necessarily a whole kind of psychic phenomenon. So I've got lots of ancestors, so they are probably all yours. I'm not feeling any of mine at the moment, which is wonderful. Oh, and my body, as I'm kind of feeling stuff, I often get, this is where I get, and I get all twitchy, because it's like, and sometimes my throat will start going and my voice will change. I don't get taken over. I will be a voice and I will be a channel, but I don't necessarily get taken over, because I'm still me. I'm still me, and I'm very much in control of being me. And I have what some people might term as gatekeepers, or spirit guides that support me as well. Just a quick thing about kind of protection, because obviously a lot of people say, well, I can't do this because I don't feel protected, I don't feel safe. Anyone can come through and can take me over. There are things that, people do, you focus on protecting yourself, you maybe put yourself in a bubble. A lot of people use colours, people do use crystals, they use all sorts of things. Again, it is very much about your mindset. If I feel I'm strong and I'm connected and I'm safe and I'm protected, then that's it. That's the bottom line. In the same way as if someone knocks on my door at home, I'm going to choose whether to open that door, and that's what I tend to always do, look through the window first, and then I make a decision. So I do that. You know, I sensing, like, in terms of now, me sensing, and there's somebody on horseback, but here, someone on the big horse here, a dappled horse, it's coming very close. But I'm feeling safe because I'm doing a scan as I'm talking to you. I'm also able to separate myself and do a scan to know that I'm happy to have any of these energies in this space. And if I wasn't, they would go. And I'm quite strict at that. It's like, no, you're not staying. Get out of here. And again, it's about that mindset of knowing that you are the one that's in charge. You know, you're the one that's in charge. And if you're not feeling comfortable in the same way that you wouldn't open your door and let someone in, if you didn't feel that you felt comfortable with that person coming in, you would hopefully shut your door or certainly do something to stop that person from coming in. And it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. But that has taken me a long time to get to that point of strength now. So I would say anybody that is wanting to develop that side of themselves, then yes, have support from somebody who knows what they're doing. That's not disempowering you, because again, you do have that power to do it. But if you're feeling a bit vulnerable, then like in any job, you know, if you or anything, if you're learning to swim, you'd have someone support you, you know, to be able to swim. It's having someone just to offer you that support. And I think it is important, and I've certainly had a lot of support over the years. I've been really lucky to work with a lot of amazing people and have that guidance and have that support, as well as developing things on my own. I don't know who this person is on the horse, but I feel like at some point I'm going to have to ask. Yeah, so psychic stuff, talking to ghosts, talking to dead people, as my kids like to call it. Mummy talks to dead people. And they do as well, so. And I have to say with my children, I haven't kind of pushed that, I haven't encouraged it in any way. It's just something that's been kind of part of their development as well. But then I've got 14 years. So moving then into something that seems a little more way out, and I will get to you at some point. I really feel it's almost like on my back now going, talk to me. Quick talk about aliens and so yeah, my first, so has anyone heard of Sasquatch? Is that something that, yeah, okay. I'll explain it because the kind of other word potentially for Sasquatch is Bigfoot. The Sasquatch people themselves don't particularly like the word Bigfoot, and obviously over the years there's been this kind of hunt for Bigfoot. You know, sadly, even now, if I tap into Google, if I tap Sasquatch into Google, you'll often come up with these kind of hunt sites where people are wanting, they're out there with their guns and they're out there in the forests and they're out there looking to find what they call Bigfoot and shoot and bring it home, which makes me feel very upset, because these are people like us. They're just people that choose to be interdimensional and then choose to not always be seen. We can choose to do that as well, but we generally as humans, we've chosen to be in our physical bodies and we've chosen to be seen. Somebody just sent me something about a program. It was really random. Again, these things happen. I love and hate Facebook, but Facebook has actually brought me a few friends from around the world that have shared things with me that have propelled my development. And someone sent me just this video of this guy who had said that he'd met a Sasquatch family in America, and that he had befriended them, and so obviously Sasquatch potentially look like apes, but they're not. They're people. and they have families and you know, family settings, and they are very, not all of them, but a bit like us, you know, majority are kind, caring, and spiritual people. And so I was sent this video.